We all know that Toradora has some pretty good OPs. Well, okay, we know that it has one great OP and one kind of average one. At least, that's what I used to believe back when I was a general fan of the show. But since sitting down to watch both the OPs for the sake of analysis, not only have I discovered what a fantastic job they both do at setting the tone of each arc, but also how well they contrast with each other to create a through-line narrative of its own, albeit an abstractly subtle one. Pre-analysis, if you asked me to describe the pre-parade OP in 2 words, I likely would have said playfully fun, with the theme song blasting through the speakers as our main characters just sorta hung out. However, now that I have dug into what the OP is trying to say, the new 2 words I would use are status quo. Ultimately, that is what the pre-parade OP sets out to define, the way things are between our 5 core characters. It starts off with the status quo between Taiga and Ryuji in a domestic sense, with Taiga smelling food and surprising Ryuji when she comes over to get some. It then sheds some information on the dynamic they have in their romantic goals, when we see them stop walking for a moment to peep on their respective crushes. But the most telling part of the OP is before the chorus, when we see Ryuji and Taiga standing together looking moderately bored, representing their comfortable and mundane dynamic, only to see them become flustered when their crushes appear, and finally more chaos erupts as Ami appears between all of them. This simple collection of still images conveys the dynamic between our main characters and the rest of the core cast. That there is a level of mundanity and comfort between Ryuji and Taiga, that comfort gets challenged when Kitamura and Minori are thrown into the mix, and that Ami just kind of shakes up everything. Pre-parade also gives us some basic insight into each core character through their walk cycles and introduction cards. Taiga, for instance, is introduced in her trash-filled apartment, wielding her wooden sword and generally looking menacing. This, coupled with the straight swinging arms in her walk cycle, suggests a general state of aggression. Ryuji, on the other hand, is introduced leaving his home, holding the fringe of his hair out of nerves. This, coupled with his more frigid walk cycle, suggests that he is far more timid and shy than Taiga. Minori is introduced by her locker, likely referencing the first time Ryuji ever met her, and greets the point of view character with a big smile and wave, which paired with her flailing walk cycle suggests that she is overly energetic and playful. Kitamura is introduced in the spot where Ryuji overheard Taiga's confession to him, suggesting that he takes the role of an observer when it comes to Taiga and Ryuji's relationship. His more toned down walk cycle suggests that he is far more traditionally well behaved and courteous. Lastly, we meet Ami in her hiding place between the vending machines, a place she goes to be alone and recharge her emotional energy. Of course, she expends this energy by performing a cute girl act around her classmates, which is reflected in her more bubbly, if not a little ditzy, walk cycle, which sees her hands behind her back and her head slightly bopping from side to side. On top of some more minor details like Kitamura's subservience to Kano, Ryuji's freakish obsession with cleaning, or their class at large being witnesses to many of their shenanigans, we also get a general sense of how friendly this group is with each other through various shots of them hanging out. Of course, the OP reflects that not everything is peachy. Showing Minori playing softball and Ami modelling clearly alludes to the issues that those characters will have with those pastimes. But ultimately we end on a display of solidarity between Ryuji and Taiga. Both characters watch the others back just like they figuratively do in the show, before being joined by the others. In the end, Pre-Parade presents a group of friends that ultimately enjoy each other's company despite ulterior motives. And for the most part, that's what the show presents as well. However, when Ami confronts Minori in episode 16, there's a fundamental shift in that status quo, one that drives our core characters apart and pushes each of them to their emotional limit. The show's second OP, Silky Heart, initially shows this new status quo, but ultimately delivers a vague narrative of its own that is developed in 4 steps. Step 1 is about establishing the isolation between our characters, which it does most effectively with the shot of Minori and Ami walking away from each other, referencing the conflict they have throughout the second half of the show. And then Ryuji and Taiga walking past each other, neither acknowledging the other in the least. This moment partly represents Taiga's vow to keep her distance from Ryuji to ensure that he can get together with Minori, but in the grand scheme of things, it represents the emotional divide between them, when Ryuji discovers that Taiga is in love with him, and he does not know how to deal with that information. The isolation stage continues by showing us what each core character is doing individually. Not all of them are alone, but they are all separated from each other. The most interesting shot in this montage is the one of Minori, being handed a softball and sadly smiling at it. Softball, after all, is the dream she chooses to pursue instead of a relationship with Ryuji. But until she makes that decision, her mental well-being suffers while she works out what she wants. And not only does this cause conflict with other characters, but it also causes her to struggle in the sport that she loves so much. However, the most confusing shot in this collection is the shot of Kitamura. Kitamura doesn't really face a lot of conflict after the Silky Heart OP is introduced. The fact that he is in the student council room suggests that he is struggling with his position of authority, but there's a problem with that. He already had that arc, and we had it while the pre-parade OP was still being used. I can't help but wonder if the Silky Heart OP was meant to be implemented earlier. In fact, putting it in the first episode of Kitamura's arc would put it almost dead in the center of the show compared to where it is now. However, if this OP was held back, I can think of two reasons for doing so. Firstly, it completely spoils the end of Kitamura's arc, given that Kano isn't there and he is back to his usual self. But the more likely reason is that this OP is better suited to conveying the struggle between Taiga and Ryuji. And the Silky Heart OP currently starts with the Christmas arc, which, Step 2 of this OP's narrative is by far the shortest, but it was necessary to take us from the stage of isolation to the stage of fighting back. In the second part, each character realizes that they are not happy being apart, with Ryuji and Ami looking away from the people they are with, Kitamura tugging at his collar, Minori lamenting her position, and Taiga standing alone. We then get to step 3, the one in which Minori and Ami fight back against what is keeping them apart from their friends, and against what is keeping them unhappy. Minori is seen sprinting throughout the school, a direct reference to a moment towards the end of the show where she chases down Taiga to make her admit her feelings for Ryuji. Ami, on the other hand, simply stands up from her usual hiding place between the vending machines, deciding to no longer hide who she is or what she expects from her friends. We get a shot of Taiga walking away from the camera, once again wielding her wooden sword, giving off an aggressive vibe. The camera appears to be following her the way Ryuji did in episode 2 when Taiga was trying to leave him behind. When Taiga does look back, we see that the aggression was an act, a front, that in reality she is actually very upset, judging by the tears in her eyes. At least, she was upset. She reacts to being seen this way with a smile. Someone has finally seen her for who she is and has stuck around, the very thing she loved Kitamura for doing. We can infer by the visual reference I mentioned earlier and the context of the story as a whole that the person she is smiling at is Ryuji. The final step sees the status quo being restored, with Taiga surprised to see Kitamura, displeased to see Ami, and glad to see Minori. When Ryuji delivers her lunch, he does so with a sweet smile, which she returns, a declaration of the affection that they have for each other. The final shot depicts our core characters taking a moment from their status quo to look at us, the audience, and smile as if they are telling us that despite all the trials and fights they will endure over the next 9 episodes, everything is going to be okay. That is ultimately what the Silky Heart OP is all about, showing that our core characters are not in a good place, that they are struggling in their own ways, but that they will persevere until they can achieve their comfortable status quo once again. If anyone is curious as to which OP I think is better, before this analysis I would have said pre-parade, but now that I have analysed them, I would say that they are as good as each other. Silky Heart may not be as colourful, playful, or catchy as pre-parade, but it couldn't be. The show was not in that place anymore, and on its own it's a solid introduction for the latter half of the show, and even delivers some fairly decent tone foreshadowing. As for the stories that will utilise that tone, well, I guess you'll have to keep watching this analysis series to find out. And that is it for this analysis. I'd like to thank my patrons Orion Tran, Quincy Chamberlain, Jaman5, Lars Espen, Shark, and Data52. If you'd like to become a patron or join the Behind Big Joe Discord server, links for both are in the description. I don't normally plug the outtakes video, but this week's has a lot of points that didn't make it into this video, so check it out if you want more hot takes on these OPs. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.